founders are valuing more and more a very strong bias for action.
Building and launching products also creates information. So there is a sense of discovery in building. You could test almost any big idea in a small manner.
Ultimately, you will only learn about the true value of the feature when it's in the actual hand of customers.
The longer I was in product, the more I started pushing back and the more often these became successful.
A very clear red flag is,
oh my God, Dios mío, this is, oh my God, Dios mío.
Hello everybody to the next edition of the Hotfix podcast, and today we are going to talk about a topic I am very close to because we want to talk about discovery, and very specifically I want to start with the question, how much discovery is enough, Christoph?
Yep, great question. So this is something I've been thinking about recently quite a lot, also because there's some very recent developments in the industry. One thing that I am starting to notice more and more, maybe it has been there for a longer time, but it's just me noticing it, is that founders are valuing more and more a very strong bias for action. A very good example for that is this Mark Zuckerberg quote that he dropped recently, where he basically said that velocity is one of the most important factors when building products. I also think that the founder mode debate goes into that direction. I'm just sensing more and more that founders really just want to get things out the door and deliver as much as possible. On the other hand, it's what product managers are here for. Product managers should de-risk. They should de-risk by doing discovery, by doing research in order to avoid that features fail in a very complex and time-consuming manner. And usually discovery takes time. Discovery, therefore, also can delay releasing features. And I think there's a clash here. It seems like founders want something different than most PMs want. And therefore, it got me thinking a bit. And not sure if I found the answer right. What about you?
So I can also sympathize with both sides, because I think on the one hand, product managers are usually talking a lot about opportunity costs. If we build something, it's not just about the thing we build, but also all the things that we don't build. And I think there is something like a discovery cost. So if we don't go to market, if we just continue researching and de-risking and analyzing, there is a risk of us losing information that we could have gotten by launching earlier, taking on more risk. So I believe in the end, the question is also how much appetite does a company or a specific team have for risk? Is it fine to not have all the answers? Is it fine to not have discovered so much and go to market very early? And I believe, depending on the stage of the company, it could be the case that very early could be a very, very good idea to go about product management. Because in the end, building and launching products also creates information. So there is a sense of discovery in building. There is a sense of discovery in launching, in creating prototypes. I think if you listen to Marty Kagan, he talks about discovery a lot in terms of building prototypes and showing different kinds of prototypes to users, and not just this theoretical, like searching for information and debating possible ideas on how to get there, or trying to de-risk in non-building ways. And I think building can be a great way to de-risking.
Yep. I just want to set the scene maybe a bit tighter. I want to talk particularly about big bets of a company, like founders having the strong opinion that their organization needs to build a new feature area, needs to break into new markets or use new technologies. AI is important. Something like where some fundamental investment, and also not small investment, is required to learn something. Usually what happens when these founder-led initiatives are being set up is that there's a lot of structure created around it. And usually when founders are starting these initiatives, they're already in a state where they're not lean anymore. Many product managers struggle to push back.
We have to de-risk this structure rather than the core idea, right? Because in the end, if it could be lean, you could just go to market with the core of whatever this idea was and validate, does it make sense? Is it viable to us? Can we make money with it? Are users understanding it? Do users have the problem? You could test almost any big idea in a small manner.
Yeah, but I think then it's seen in a way that the team is not delivering very often.
Do you think so?
And that I think that also prototyping is an investment, a time investment.
Mhm.
You also need to set up a team. You need to draft your hypothesis. It will definitely take you a couple of weeks to bring a prototype in front of customers. And very often I get the sense that this is being seen as delaying actually building it.
So I think, first of all, I want to disagree with the statement that it has to take weeks to deliver a prototype, because I really don't think it does. I think there's many companies out there that are able to ship prototypes, like design prototypes to customers in a matter of days, idea to shipping in a matter of days. I think it's something that organizations get themselves into because they somehow want to have this prototype creation in a similar process and with similar like safeguards than they have big feature deliveries, where if they do like a 3-month delivery, they have all these safeguards to not waste a lot of money, time, and effort. But then somehow they put these same safeguards to teams that are trying to build a prototype, and that just artificially slows them down by weeks. Because in the end, if you would just have, I don't know, 1 PM, 1 designer, 1 engineer, defining what is the hypothesis that we try to test here, building something very quickly and showing it to customers, I think it could be done in a matter of days.
So I think the argument on the bias to action side, on the side where delivery is the most important part, I can also sympathize a lot with the argument that ultimately you will only learn about the true value of the feature when it's in the actual hand of customers. I think also prototype testing can, if it's done right, can de-risk certain desirability risks, but it can never show you the actual impact. And I think that's also where founders want to see the feature being delivered in its actual form to customers.
I get that. But then if you, for example, you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, right? And then they rebranded their company Meta and tried to build a metaverse. And I guess there is a lot of desire for just building stuff. And they definitely tried. And then I think I was at one like marketing conference where I saw some forms of it. I've never seen it ever used by anyone ever outside of like a conference. So that is the definition of what product management shouldn't do, right? If product managers work like this, it's almost nonsensical that they exist in the first place, because they burned billions of dollars, and there would have been much better ways to go about this.
Yeah.
There is founders like Mark Zuckerberg who say these things, but I don't think they have the credibility to show that they know anything about this whatsoever. So I believe with a business like Meta, they make, I don't know, I don't have the exact numbers, but I would assume 70-80% of the revenue running ads. And other than that, they are failing a lot of products, a lot of feature-driven products where they try to create value. They have never managed to create a business coming close to their ad business. I think it's similar with other companies. From that position, it's very simple to say, we should just build things, and then you build something like the metaverse and burn billions of dollars. I think maybe not the person we should listen to when it comes to how we should do product management.
Yeah, great point. And also, I think it's never a really good idea to compare Meta or these FAANG companies to usual SaaS companies who have to watch their financials more tightly. However, I think one big factor for when you as a PM is being tasked with a new big bet that the founder wants to see being built is to understand where this is coming from. And I've been in many situations where I didn't have enough context. Is this now a random idea? Is this coming from actually anecdotes from customers? Or maybe is it coming already from UX research and I didn't know about it? And I think a second very interesting dimension to look at is the ability to revert. So if we build this, are we touching some fundamental architectural piece of the platform, and we would need to migrate all of our customers if we would have to sunset the feature again? or is it a standalone feature that can be sunsetted without a lot of extra work? And by looking at these two dimensions, I found that you can actually argue for a good de-risking plan. If something is very easy to revert and you have a lot of evidence and a lot of context on why you think that makes sense, then I think we can get to work right away, right?
Yeah, and I think there's this concept of revolving doors, right? So we should be aiming to build a lot of those revolving doors that we can just walk back out of. And I think whenever you walk through a door that shuts behind you, obviously then you have lots of risks to take care of. And I think there's many industries that are prone to this, right? It could be like medical or banking or somewhere where a mistake could be detrimental to a lot of people or also just a select few people. But most PMs are not in that situation, I would say. Most PMs work in some kind of B2B situation where they serve other businesses that will be fine if they fail in one way or another.
Yeah, I just think that also in B2B SaaS regular businesses, there can be features that are very hard to revert. Something like where you change how you store data, for example, and you're migrating all of your customers to this new system, which seems to be very hard to revert afterwards again.
But if I look back at my career, all the times I built these features that were just pushed onto me by a founder where I didn't believe in them from the very beginning, the longer I was in product, the more I started pushing back and the more often these became successful. And I think, especially in the beginning of one's career, it's just very hard to push back or ask for evidence or ask for where this is coming from or why we are building this. But I think these are the questions that need to be asked in these situations. If you just take it and run and build, and then in the end you fail, it is very unlikely that the founder was like, sorry, I pushed this onto you, but rather the product manager will be responsible for the product that they delivered in the end. So I think it's also the responsibility to, in the very beginning, ask hard questions and not just go into, okay, let's discover everything about this problem and this thing that we want to build, and then build something that makes the founder happy, but rather ask tough questions in the beginning. And then if there is evidence to build it, go and build maybe not the whole thing just because the founder needs it. I would still highly advocate to start building something small, a prototype, an MVP, even though MVP is a very overused word in the industry and doesn't really mean anything anymore. But in the true sense of it, I think there's a lot of value in working like this. And some bias to action can be good, but not the kind where just build what your founder wants you to build.
Yeah, I think a very clear red flag is when a PM is being tasked with a new big bet and it doesn't make any sense at all why this matters to the organization. I think it's actually just a sign that there is no company or product strategy. So maybe it falls back to the fact that there shouldn't be any big bet that any product team is being tasked with that doesn't make sense in a strategic context.
Correct. And I think in the end, there must have been so many things going wrong up to this point where they're out of nowhere. There's a thing that needs to be built. And then whoever, if it's the founder, if it's sales, if it's customer success, doesn't matter where the feature is coming from. Why in the first place would a random feature come to a PM and they would be tasked to build it? So I think if this is the case, there should be a lot of questions like, what is this paying into? What are we trying to achieve with this? Drive retention, increase sales, keep users on the platform for more time, or whatever it may be that you might want to achieve with that. If there are no good answers to these questions, just we need to build this because our competition built it as well, or we need to build this because I believe that this will do A, B, and C for us. Maybe ask 2 more follow-up questions there, because you will be very unhappy 6 months down the line when you launched it and everyone in the company asks you, why have we built this? No one wants this. No one uses this. There is no value either for us nor for our customers, because then the PM simply didn't do their job. And I believe if a company acts like this, they don't need product managers necessarily. If they're just there to de-risk, under very big quotes, things that have already been decided to be built, they are anyways not de-risking, because if they find risks, usually they still build it and they just find workarounds across those risks. And then it's not de-risking, it's just a charade of let's act as if we do product management because, I don't know, our investors think we should have product managers.
Yep. To a certain extent, though, I also need to somehow argue for the other side, for the founder side, because I think it can also happen that teams fall into analysis paralysis, and simply discover for too long, maybe set up too big research initiatives for something that is very clear anyways. Do you have any recommendations or factors to look at for teams or signs where teams can say, hey, I think we actually have enough evidence to start now?
I believe usually if a team is at that point where they feel super comfortable because they know everything, they are months too late to actually start working on the product. So I believe they should start. So whenever you're at a point, so I think at the very beginning, you may have some kind of hypothesis. I think if it's not given to you, think about what do we want to achieve with this? Why are we building this? And then I think the team simply has to de-risk this major hypothesis. I don't know, is this actually something our customers want? Is this something that we can make money with if this is the intention? Is this something that users will be able to use in the end, and can we build it technically? Those 4 questions. And then ask just about the hypothesis, no details yet, no nothing. Just ask those. And then if you can answer them maybe very quickly with some kind of, I don't know, conversations with customers or conversations with sales or whoever needs to be asked, find answers to these questions. And then if you are fine with that, go into some kind of building mode. In my mind, there you can have a bias to action and then de-risk the details while you're at it. I think this is, even though there is then some risks that in some minor detail of that product or that feature, you may not be at the perfect solution at day one in terms of viability or user experience or whatever. I think you have built something where in the core, it is viable, it's valuable, it's usable, and it's feasible. And then you can iterate on the solution that you're building across this problem. And I think this is the best way of going about it. If you start analyzing for months every single detail and de-risk every single aspect of every single part of the feature, you will never build anything.
Yeah. Also, Jeff Bezos once said that most decisions should be made like intentionally with 70% of the information that you wish you had, because everything beyond that just takes too long to get. So that's interesting, because that assumes that PMs should actually always act with some uncertainty left.
Yes, I believe so. I think everything else is Wonderland. If someone knows everything from the minute they start, they simply started way too late. In a business world where you're not the only one building, someone else will have started with less information available because they are more prone to take risk, or they have more to lose, right? If they are a smaller company, a smaller startup, you see it in startups all the time. They very often start building before de-risking anything. If there is no PM yet, they usually just start building, and they have 5% of the information, and they build. Yes, they fail more often, but they are much, much, much faster than any scale-up or any enterprise. And then if you look at large enterprises, they usually analyze and talk and converse about everything for months. And then maybe they are at the more certain solution at the end, but they are usually much too slow, and they go to market 2 years after everyone already did so.
But that means to a certain extent, PMs need to just apply product sense, right? So the product sense still needs to be an important factor. At some point, they need to say, okay, it's not 100%, but we know something, and that is enough. And that is a call that the product manager needs to take.
Yes. And I believe it becomes much simpler when PMs have a very clear understanding where they want to be, let's say 6 months down the line. If they have a clear goal that they want to achieve, they can start running with all kinds of initiatives that pay towards this goal. And then if engineering asks, hey, we don't know what we are building next month, they at least everyone knows we will be building something that pays into this goal. No, we don't have every detail figured out, and no, not every design is done now, and no, not every little detail has been discussed with customers or customer success or whoever, but we know that we are building towards this goal, and this is our general hypothesis of how we want to solve this goal. And then everything within this we can figure out while we go. And then usually running very quickly forces everyone to make informed decisions much quicker, much more uncomfortable, not wait for this perfect moment where all the information is available, but rather start on maybe not 70%, right? Maybe for like a Series A startup, 40% is enough. And then the more mature companies come, the more information they probably need because they have more to lose. But if your customer base is not that big yet, what do you have to lose? You have so much to win if you do it right, and not so much to lose yet.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting, this take that usually startups, especially before Series A, they usually don't de-risk at all. Maybe they talk to customers more often. Also the product leader, whoever that is in that stage, is more involved in sales conversations, and therefore they have more market knowledge built in, but they usually don't run very structured de-risking exercises.
Correct. And I think this also points towards what you said before, where some kind of product sense or also market knowledge or also in general knowledge about the thing that you are solving for apparently means the more you have, the less time and effort you need to spend on de-risking, because there's some inherent knowledge that helps you make decisions without having some structured or formal or scientific approach to actually de-risking this, but rather build up a good amount of knowledge to do this on gut feeling, right? Even though this might just be years of experience working in this industry or with this customer or whatever this may be.
Yeah. I think there's also another area that proves how messy product management can be, because there is no like ultimate blueprint or framework that a product manager can apply that just tells them, okay, now you can take the decision. Ultimately, it's still a lot of feeling, which can be dangerous, because then it can be also an excuse for product managers to say, no, I'm saying we built this now, even though they haven't done they haven't talked to customer for a year. But yeah, that's why you should probably just try to hire
it's even more complex, because it's different for every problem one tries to solve, right? If the same PM in 1 year could try to improve the retention of a specific customer group in their organization, where they maybe have a lot of knowledge already because they worked with these customers for years and they can maybe be very successful without a lot of de-risking. And then the next year they try to run a product-led sales motion where they bring the product to a lower touch customer group that can onboard themselves. Suddenly they have no knowledge about these customers. So for the same person in the same company, the amount of de-risking or discovery they have to do could change depending on what they are building.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal setup, this problem that we're talking about at the moment only exists for new feature areas. A feature area where a PM is tasked with building from 0 to 1, a big bet that the founder wants to see as part of their vision. If there's a product team who is working on an existing features, they're iterating on that, and then they should also have continuous discovery built in, right? Discovery in that case should not block delivery. It should happen in parallel. It's only a problem for new big bets where it's really sequentially.
But I think also, and there is a great article by Posttalk. So they're building like a product analytics suite. They came out of Y Combinator 4 years ago, and they wrote an article about how they do product management differently. Because they, in the beginning, they had product managers, and they said all product managers did was slow down our teams. The whole thing, they didn't believe it added any value. And they said at one point they changed how they do product management, in a sense where the product manager is not responsible for any kind of bringing a product to market. The product manager is also not telling engineers what to build. They are not deciding on these things at all. They are there to supply the team with the knowledge they need to be successful. They are there to look at data, understand customers, look at risks that might come up if the team is going there. But ultimately, the team still decides themselves what they do with this information, which is a quite interesting take, right? Because I think especially for companies that are not corporations that don't have a huge need for security or just the minimum amount of risk, this might be very suitable. And I think it changes in general how PMs maybe 5 years ago were usually always very deeply embedded in the engineering team, running stand-ups, doing all these sorts of things. And if this is the case, PMs become very attached to, is the thing we deliver valuable enough to spend the time of our engineers, right? And then you, in my opinion, go into over discovery, because you're vested in making sure that you don't waste the time of engineers, quote unquote. But if the PM's value in the end is to make sure that the team has all the information to work on the things that they believe matter most, if they then spend a month on something that is not valuable, it's fine. I think it incentivizes the PM more to be more open to these risks, to say, okay, we can spend a month of our engineers' time. If we deliver something that is not as valuable, it's fine, because over 30 months, this increases the amount of things we can deliver that have value by more than the time we waste.
Do you, by the way, generally think that as companies mature from Series A to Series B, C, D, that in Series A, the need for additional foundational discovery is less compared to later stages? I'm asking because usually in Series A companies, founders have a very strong opinion on what still needs to be built. They also now have first traction. They have a reasonable amount of revenue, and they might be also still closer to customers compared to later stage companies.
I believe so. And I also believe that in most Series A companies, this is usually when they start hiring someone for product, right? But I think still the person who founded the company, who spent a lot of time from like day one, should still have very deep knowledge about product, about the customers they're building for. So I think they should be very involved. And then step by step enable a head of product or someone they hired to run this organization into Series B, Series C, where they need to focus on other areas of the business, right? Where they need to focus on expansion or step by step to IPO, whatever it may be, right? So I think Series A is this moment where they first hire product or they first hire product leader, and step by step need to give more of this responsibility to product. But while they are still in the Series A stage, they should be involved. They should be hands-on. They should think about problems. They should think about hypotheses, because from day zero to that point, they did it. And I think if you just suddenly stop and suddenly think, I have these PMs and this product leader now, and now I don't need to think about all these things anymore, you suddenly give this to a group that is in the company usually for a very short time and doesn't have the necessary backstory. They weren't there when the first customers were acquired and when the first bad decisions were made and when the first mistakes were made. So I think it would be very dangerous to very quickly step away and just let the PM team run by themselves.
Yeah. So a product leader joining a Series A company is probably most successful when he puts more emphasis on delivery and getting their vision out the door, obviously with a reasonable amount of de-risking being done, but not as much as in later stage companies.
Correct. And not just necessarily delivery. Also, I think just step by step taking this product decision responsibility from the founder and having more and more of these decisions transferred to them so that the founder can focus on other things, and then gaining this trust by the founder that they can make these decisions, right? Because I think it's also hard for a founder that just hires a product person into their company, and for them, right, maybe just a few years back, and for Series A, it might be like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years back, all this company was them, maybe with a co-founder in front of a screen, just building, talking to customers, running marketing and everything. And then they went through years of very, very painful, hard work. And suddenly you want to hand this scepter of, this is the product and please just run it. Please just build whatever you think you should be building. I think this is almost impossible for founders. There's not many founders who can do that. So it's natural that they want to be involved. And I would say for a product leader joining a Series A, I would just work on getting the founders, get the feeling that they can make these decisions, that they can understand the customers as well, understand the business as well. But I think this takes time.
Yeah. I really like what we talked about in a podcast recently with Tama, that I think head of product should enable teams to empower themselves. And empowering themselves means that they can come up with new features, with new products, with new initiatives that they can pitch to founders. And founders are thinking, perfect, this is perfectly aligned with my vision. Please build it. And I think this creates what you ultimately just mentioned. This is what creates this trust in the product team, that they can take decisions themselves. But yeah, it's obviously a process.
I think it shouldn't be underestimated, because missing this step by a product manager will lead to a company that grows in terms of team size, and then multiple product managers, and then there's a head of product. And if that founder never got that feeling that this head of product can go beyond delivery, can go beyond building what I tell them to build, that is where it becomes very problematic, because then in a larger organization, it's just not possible. A founder cannot be in 10 product teams and understand all of the nuances that deeply. So this trust has to be established so that the company can be functional at a Series B or at a Series C. And I think there's many companies out there where this is just never the case. PM or head of product came into a Series A, started to focus on delivery, never made the jump to actually take the responsibility about, I don't know, why are we building something? What are we building? What are the hypotheses behind this? Never asked hard questions when the founder just pushed for delivery. And then I think fixing this when the company is larger is almost impossible.
Yeah. So this transition from founder-led development to autonomous teams in a scale-up is actually a very interesting one, and one that the head of product has to master, one that has to happen.
Yes.
And probably not all people in the company are aware that it has to happen.
Correct. And I think that the term is also a bit misleading. Like because in the end, the head of product or a CPO has to step into this role the founder was in before. They have to have opinions. They have to understand the market better than anyone else in the company. They have to understand customers than anyone else in the company. And then they have to argue with their PMs about certain things that they are building or certain goals that they are working towards. And they shouldn't be afraid to voice this opinion, because some books said teams should be empowered and they should make all the decisions by themselves. Doesn't mean that the head of product is just there to do a one-on-one every week with their PMs and then let them run and let them fail by themselves. I don't think that this is a good idea. They need to then step into this founder's role at one point, and not being the founder, but rather being the decision maker for many things in the product. And empowering teams, in my mind, then means that the head of product makes decisions on what are we trying to achieve, which customers are we trying to acquire, and so on and so forth. And then the teams know what to work towards, and then they can come up with features themselves, and everyone is happy. The founder is happy because we're reaching our goals. The head of product is happy because he has teams that are actually delivering against those goals and discovering against those goals, trying to figure out what can we do to achieve the things we need as a company to get to the point where we want to be.
Great. I think we've now wandered somewhere else, but it was still incredibly inspiring. Stefan, I think with that we can bring it to an end.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.